Welcome to another episode of The Financially Free Investor, where you will learn information and strategies on how to become financially independent by investing in real estate, something that is not taught openly in our society today. Financial freedom matters so you can live a bigger life, retire early, and do what matters most to you. Get ready to hear tried and true methods to becoming financially free with your host, Jordy Clark.
All right, everyone, welcome into another episode of The Financially Free Investor. I have an amazing guest here for you today. He was kind enough to send me his bio in one sheet so I can kind of take a look, and this is going to be a great conversation for you guys. I have Kase Knochenhauer with me today. So welcome in, buddy.
Thank you for having me, Jordy. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you want me to read your bio, or you want to?
I'll follow you, whatever you think is best, sir.
Okay, cool. So Kase's bio says in the last 3 years, Kase has built a real estate development company that flips 60 plus homes per year, acquired 120 rental units, and hit financial freedom. He focuses on firing himself every day. Love that. Kase's wife, Laura, is seriously patient. Since the start of the pandemic, he's purchased a commercial airplane fuselage. I don't even know about that. A 42-foot school bus, an ambulance, imported $900,000 worth of classic Land Rover Defenders, and purchased 14 cubic yards of winter beanies, which sounds like a lot of winter beanies. Kase and Laura, their 2 sons, and their dog plan to live and travel in their Toyota Tacoma 4 months out of the year, starting this November.
It sounds like a lot when you put it all in a couple of paragraphs, but yeah.
What? So, I mean, that's who you are. That's kind of your bio, where you're at. Tell me, what got you started on this journey?
Yeah. So today, I mean, I guess I'll kind of tell you where I am today, and maybe you can tell me where we need to pivot, but I run a real estate flipping team. It's sort of my day-to-day job. And I've got a couple side projects, and it's something I constantly battle with is fun versus money versus time. So like, there's a lot of good things that may not be the best option. But I'd say sort of the path really changed. 2018, we switched our business model. And I used to be a real estate team leader. And so I was selling, 100, 120 homes a year with a bunch of agents. And to be frank, I didn't like it. I was stressed. I wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't making enough money. I was making money, but not enough. And I woke up and I'm like, this is, what am I doing this for? Am I doing this for ego? Am I doing this for myself or my family? And then at the very same time, I did my taxes. And I realized that I made half my money flipping like 4 or 5 houses. And so I implemented the 80-20 rule, and except I went to the extreme measure, and we completely pivoted our business, and we took our real estate team, let a few people go, and then enough people thought I kind of went wacko that they left and went their own direction. And so now, we've got a full-time flip team. So that's the major pivot, I would say, in life that sort of turned me from very much like traditional employee to more entrepreneur.
Okay. So in 2016, you started as a real estate agent.
That's correct. Yep.
And then you built your own real estate sales team. You guys were selling 120 houses a year?
Yeah, something like that. I think our 3rd year we did about 120.
Okay.
I started, 2016. I sold 3 houses, maybe 4. It was a sort of a embarrassing number. My apologies. So yeah, it was like 3 or 4 houses. I think we made $1,200. So it was as far as I could say, quite a failure in terms of real estate. I worked 9 months of the year as well. So it wasn't like I just started in November. But the 2nd year, I'm like, okay, I'm either going to go broke or I have to make this work. So I pushed myself. But yeah, the 3rd year is where I really sort of expanded the real estate team. I spent some time with a coaching program for real estate, and team is what they pushed. And unfortunately, it just didn't sit well with my time or myself. So
sounds very similar to my story. What got you? Because I know a ton of real estate agents, and most of them, they, don't make very much money. a small percentage make a ton of money, but they spend just as much, right?
Mhm.
So what got you to change your paradigm from, hey, I'm going to sell real estate to, hey, I'm going to flip homes. I'm going to invest in real estate. I'm going to own rentals.
Yeah, I'd say it wasn't, to be honest, it wasn't the money. At first, when I saw an opportunity, so there's a house on Taft Street. I'll never forget it. It was a very small 2-bedroom, 1-bath house on Taft in Spring Lake. So it's just a half mile from my home now. And I walked in, and the floor is like incredibly messy. There's clothing piled up 45 degrees on one side of the house. The couch is torn apart. It's the type that you can't really breathe inside the home. And I remember I connected with the seller, and I thought, like, these people are so nice, but the house just, we couldn't sell it because it didn't fit the real estate market. And whether it's something, financial, family, emotional, whatever reason someone can't really fit the traditional home style, they always kind of look the same. We always say they fall in 3 buckets. They're 3 F's. But yeah, financial, family, or physical, I should say, sounds like an F, but physical property condition. And when it's often those 3 things, or one of the 3 or all of the 3, they become very challenging to list, and it becomes very challenging to sell. So for my selfish position, it's like, I don't even know if I want to list the house. But I also connected with this particular seller, and I was trying to figure out a way to help them. So I put the property in the market just to help, and it wouldn't sell. And she just like gave up, and I ended up giving her a cash offer. And that was my first flip, because I saw this sort of opportunity to help somebody out of a position that they were stuck in. But that's how it sort of happened. And I ended up just liking it, enjoyed it. And by all measures, it was not a very good property to flip, but it was a good start. So yeah, that was sort of the first adventure into the flipping world was by accident.
Okay. That's interesting. And that's a tool that a lot of agents should have in their back pocket, in my opinion, is, hey, if this house isn't selling, here's my cash price, right? I'll buy it from you.
Yep.
Could you get more? Yeah, maybe. But here's, take it or leave it kind of a thing. Because I've bought a few houses from clients where we get there, and same thing, hoarder houses. They've got a ton of, stuff in there, mental disorder, physical, whatever. It works out if it can be a win-win. So you flip your first house. Did you make any money?
So I did eventually. I ended up selling on land contract, because I was thinking, and this is fascinating, but I was thinking this is 2000, probably 2000, late 18, early 2019. And I thought, hey, I want some passive income. So I had a woman offer me 20 or 30 grand down and $1,000 a month. And so I sold it to her for a pretty good price, but she gave me 1 or maybe 2 payments and then stopped paying me. And so the next 9 to 12 months, I learned the foreclosure process. So unfortunately, she had no intention. When she moved out, she pulled the fuses out of the house. She took she filled the pipes with concrete, tore vinyl off the siding of the house. She took the furnace in, like the inside of the furnace, just ripped it out. I don't know what they were doing. But anyway, just completely destroyed the house. So I actually flipped that twice. I flipped it when I sold it to her, and then I sold it again. And so it was a win, but it took me probably 16 to 18 months to sort of get through the whole stage of learning to sell on land contract, how to collect ACH payments from land contract owners, and then go back to the flip market. And I've done some land contracts now, but I also learned my lesson. I need like a huge, substantial down payment.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, what happened after that? Obviously you probably said, hey, this worked out great in the first few months, went and bought a couple more houses to flip.
Yeah, I was a little slower off the ground. I think I did 3 or 4 my first year and probably 6 or 7 the next. And those were something I just acquired through time. And so my first few years, I may have purchased a half dozen rentals the first 3 years of real estate, but it really started to explode about 2019. And that was, 2018 is when I partnered up with a local investor, and he actually called me and said, "Hey, I'll give you this price for a listing you had." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll call the seller, talk to him." And he said the seller gave a verbal yes to the investor, and the investor then tried to buy the property, but the seller wouldn't then sign the contract. So the agent / investor called me just furious, like, "You better check yourself, and would you do what you say?" And then he hung up on me. I called him back. I'm like, "Dude, I got more houses like just like this. Which ones do you want? And tell me what you want." And I had coffee with him a week or 2 weeks later. He wrote me $180,000 check, and I bought 2 houses with his money and no paperwork. And we flipped them. And that was the beginning of my relationship with John. Is he wrote me $180,000 check with no relationship except a cup of coffee. So that's how I sort of brought him as a financial partner. And I think that first year we probably did 10 or 12, and then we doubled it every year until we hit about 50.
Okay. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's been an interesting adventure.
What's the average price point where you're at?
Yeah, great question. So we kind of have two markets. So I'm going to call it Kent County and Ottawa County are our sort of traditional B+A neighborhoods. They're very nice. So through time it sort of changed. So today, Ottawa County, Kent County, I'd say our average price point's the high 200s. But we also have two other markets that we work in, and that is Kalamazoo, Battle Creek, and then also Muskegon. So those are sort of just north and just south of Ottawa and Kent County. So those homes tend to be closer to 150 post flip. And so when we flip a house, if that's the medium price point, we typically stick to the median or less. So, if your market's 500,000, I try very hard not to flip a $700,000 house, because at that value, people are extremely picky when it comes to repairs. The closing process takes longer. Your returns can be higher, but we tend to see a lot more inspection issues than we do for the smaller homes, where people are okay if the trim isn't like perfectly precise to the millimeter, and they're okay. They're expecting a home that's livable, not a home that's perfect. So
yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
What state are you in?
Michigan. Sorry. Yeah. So I live in Spring Lake, Michigan. Our central market is Grand Rapids, and we do about a 90-minute drive around Grand Rapids. So if you're looking at the Michigan map, we go from about Ludington to Lansing, down to Battle Creek, and then into South Haven. So it's about a third of Michigan. It's quite a large territory.
Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
So started flipping a bunch of houses. What gave you the passive income bug from rental properties? Because I'm curious to hear what.
Yeah. So rental, everyone here probably knows the BRRRR method, right? So buy, rehab, rent, and repeat, famously coined by Mr. Brandon. But we did our first property. I bought a duplex for $84,000. At the time, it was rented at like $400 a unit in Spring Lake. And immediately we were able to bump the rents to about $550 or $600. I think today they're $750, maybe $800 per unit. I still have the first rental I've ever purchased. And so we like B neighborhoods. I've had a few A rentals. We have a lot of B rentals and some C that we're trying to push to B. But that's sort of what got the bug, is we bought it for $84,000. Bumped the rent and then refinanced it at $120. I got all my money back, and I went and bought another one. And so we've sort of been turning properties. Today we're at about 100 units. We've got 2 apartment complexes, a dozen single families, and quite a few smaller, duplexes, 3-4 units. So the cash flow is interesting though. So like I always look at the cash flow. We don't make any money on our rentals, which is a really interesting way to put it. So a lot of people look at C rentals or B rentals and like, this is ridiculous cash flow. But the reality is most good landlords, if you don't plan to be a slumlord, means that you're going to buy it, you're going to put a new roof in it, you're going to redo a kitchen, you're going to fix up a bathroom. So most of our properties that we buy, we negative cash flow our first 2 years. So it's pretty exciting, because right now we've been buying faster than our our properties are beginning to cash flow. So right now, I think we're still putting $40,000 to $50,000 a month into our properties. We don't have to, but I'm choosing to. So I've chosen to use my cash flow to perform capital improvements. But we're hitting the point now where I'm going to be able to do a large refinance, and that cash flow is going to come in the form of a tax-free, withdrawal on the equity of the property, which is going to be very exciting. So my multifamilies and single families have always sort of just paid the mortgages, paid the taxes, and then all of the cash flow I dump into capital expenditures. So things that I buy properties that had deferred maintenance. So
okay,
yeah.
Cool. Sounds pretty common. So you guys are just over 100 units. You're planning maybe a big event where you can take a big chunk out and go enjoy some of it, I hope.
Yeah. So, and I should say, we sort of have a circle. So we're constantly burying properties. So we run, I think right now we've got 7 or 8 properties we own cash. So those cash flow extremely well. I mean, clearly there's no mortgage on it. But what we do is when we get a bundle of $300,000 to $500,000, we go to one of our local credit unions, and we're able to do a portfolio mortgage. So right now we're doing 720s to lock in I think we just got it at 5.25%. So 7-year AM, or sorry, 20-year AM, 7-year term, and 5.25. And so we're able to pull all of the value out 5 or 6 at a time. So we typically, sort of buy until we have that value, and then we recycle the funds again. So we're burying as a portfolio.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
Yeah.
Now that's how you get past 10, right? You go lock up your 10 Fannie Freddie, and from there you got to figure out other ways of buying single family homes. So
Yes, sir.
that's cool to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about, because we're kind of jumping around a little bit, but
Yeah, please.
tell me a little bit about transitioning from being a realtor to now you're an investor, and you leveraged yourself out of that business.
As an agent, I love the real estate business. If I wasn't married and I didn't have children and I didn't have hobbies and I didn't have friends. So being a realtor or a real estate agent means, I think the best ones either establish extremely clear schedules where they don't answer the phone after a certain point, or they don't answer the phone on Sundays or afternoon on Saturday or whatever it is. But the problem is we're all tempted by money. And so when Mr. Seller calls or Mr. Buyer calls and we want to be the best agent we can be, we answer that call because we want to offer service and earn an income. And that got me. Like, it's really hard to say no to a $10,000 commission. It's just, it's something that I didn't have the ability to say no to enough. So it meant I was working way too hard. And so I realized my easiest client was myself and my wife. My wife doesn't ask about investments. She doesn't ask about anything. I give her a monthly update on where things stand, and that's my client. So at this point, I have 2 licensed agents that work for me. I have a listing agent, a transaction coordinator. We have 4 acquisition specialists. And so I'm fairly well out of the transaction realm. So we put properties under contract today that I don't know about. I do a final review. So they do an inspection of the contractor. They re-verify comps, basically like an in-house BPO. And then I'm brought in and I just do a final review. So mostly what I do is I just train, help coordinate. At this point, I do contractor management. So I renovate the I don't renovate, but I manage one of our 8 crews that renovate the properties. And I've been able to significantly drop my hours, which is excellent. But my main thing I love is I don't have to take these phone calls. I haven't had anybody yell at me in a long time, which is extremely exciting. When we work with distress sellers, the key I love is it's really hard being an agent, because when it goes right, it's not because you did it, but when it goes wrong, it's all your fault. And I actually take that personally, right? It is very hard for me to do, but now I go and I buy someone's house and like, oh man, like, I'm just so happy I ran into you. Like, I'm going to tell everybody. And we bought a woman's house like 3 years ago. I met her met her the day before she was going to lose to tax foreclosure. The day before, I went to the courthouse with her and paid her taxes off. And she walked away with a big check and she was super happy. And I still get referrals from her like probably every 3 or 4 months. And it's just constant. It's rewarding. It's fun. I feel like I'm making an impact. I think a lot of it's mentality where before I felt like anyone could do the job. And now I don't think that many people could, because I'm an investor, sure, but a lot of what we do is we listen and we ask questions and we're patient in regards to family situations. And so I think not like a therapist, but we're supporting their very challenging position, and we're there in their pivotal moment, which is, selling a family member's home that's passed away, or choosing to sell their parents' home as they move into a nursing home or something like that. So I see a lot of reward that I didn't have as an agent that I do get today.
That's cool. So you've got 4. Well, let me take a step back.
Yeah.
Are all of your employees locally there where you're at, or
great question?
Do you have a mix of virtual assistants versus physical?
Yeah, so I'll walk you through my team kind of top down. So I have a partner I hired as an agent originally, and he's been unbelievably patient. His name's Tyler. And so in 2019, I brought him in as a partner. And so he and I profit together. And so what happens is I don't know if have you read Rocket Fuel before?
Yep.
You have. Okay. So I'm the visionary. He's the integrator, which means I think of things and he actually does them, right? So we always say I kind of make a mess and then he cleans it up as he runs behind me trying to catch up. And so he and I sort of act as a two-headed beast, I'll say, on top of the organization. We've got 4 departments underneath Tyler. So Tyler is sort of acting as our operations manager. The 4 departments, we've got a sales manager. So at this point, Tyler's also our sales manager, moving Matt, another employee, into that position over the next 6 months. The other role we have is a transactional manager. So that's Colleen. And then we have our HR and flip manager. So I'm in one of those roles. And then we've got a VA in another one. And so kind of below is where most of our employees sit. So in the sales team, we've got 3 virtual assistants from the Philippines. So they all work 8 to 5. Maybe one of them's 10 to 7 or something. I can't remember, but they're all first shift here. So third shift in the Philippines. And then in the sales side, we also have Matt, who I mentioned earlier. So we hired him as a local caller he's in West Michigan with us. So he was actually here yesterday. And he's going to be transitioning to sit in that sales management position. So Tyler can take over more of the operations and I can step just a little further back. In our transaction department, we have Colleen. So she's a local employee as well. And she's co-trained with one of our Filipino employees, a 4th Filipino employee. Jill has been with us for 3 years. She's from the Philippines. And so together they sort of tackle the acquisition management, the utility turn on and off. They deal with the sellers, send them cards, send them gift baskets and stuff like that. And then we hire a local listing agent to do the property. So we actually now outsource all of our listings. We used to do them, but we realized that it's just so much more efficient to have someone else do them. Now I get very few phone calls, which is super exciting. And then our last department is HR, which is very small. That's just basically payroll, issues like that. And then, I'm sorry, there's one more, is our flip management. So I'm in that seat right now. That's something we'll probably hire out in like 12 to 18 months. But right now we've got 8 construction crews and they're all about 2.5 people, I'd say, on average. And so they go through and do the whole thing. So yeah, we got 4 departments with a total of 8 employees, 4 of which are local, 4 are Filipino, and then we've got about 25 contractors across the 8 crews.
How do you manage the virtual assistants?
Yeah, just like any other employee. There's really, I found no difference. The thing I love, I've hired several, I think we've had 7 or 8 VAs from the Philippines now. I've been extremely impressed across the board. The four that we have, though, I'd say are extremely consistent across the Filipino culture, and they're very loyal. They're extremely hard workers. I've not only joked, but I've actually seriously changed passwords for our VAs when they go on vacation, so they can't log in and continue doing their work. Like I've never had to do that for an American employee. Filipino, though, I've had to change passwords. And so the Filipinos, they are just unbelievably loyal. Like I truly think that there's a solid chance that most of these employees would stay with us for 5 to 10 plus years. And I think that's a huge boon. But yeah, we do in terms of actual training and how that looks, our sales team meets at 9 o'clock. So they get together for, I think, just a half hour every day. They get together, review things. On Tuesdays, we have we follow an EOS curriculum or EOS structure. And we have our sales and operations team at 9 to 10. And then we have our level 10 meeting at 10:30 to noon following that. And so we meet with them just like you and I are meeting today. In fact, Colleen, one of my local employees, I don't think I met her for 3 months. Or I met her and then I didn't see her for 3 months, which is pretty interesting, right? So, our Filipinos are halfway across the world. Colleen's an hour away, and there's no reason with technology and Zoom, if we coordinate and communicate, we can do a lot just through electronic communication. So,
yeah, absolutely. How do you balance like getting someone up and running? Right. So let's say we hire a new VA and it's a marketing VA.
Sure.
And, how do you balance getting them up and running and, figuring out what their task list, their to-do list, whatever you want to call it. I mean,
I love this question. So I've hired several VAs that I shouldn't have hired, and I stand firmly that it wasn't their fault, it was mine. And the reason that is, and I think this is true with most things in business, I think if you're going to manage a process, you have to know how to teach it. And I think it's a very common misconception with both local and international employees that it's like, oh, okay, I need somebody to do social media, or I need somebody to do Google PPC, or whatever it might be. The problem is if you're going to come and train somebody to do it or hire a professional, it's a very different process. So for example, I'll use Google PPC as an example. So I could do like very basic. By that, like I can waste a lot of money on Google ads and think I know what I'm doing, right? I make just enough effectiveness that my ROI sucks, but I get leads out of it. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I could train a VA to do this. So I'll bring them in, I'll have them write the ads, pull the information, pull the data. But the problem is I didn't actually know what I was doing. And so I trained my VA to work exactly like I did it, which was not very well. And then I hired a third-party company that's, I think they actually are in the Philippines, but I hired a third-party company, but I have no oversight. All I say is I want leads. This is what I want them to look like. This is who I want them to target, and they do everything. And I pay a lot more for it, but I'm hiring a specialist. I'm not hiring a VA to do something. And so when it comes to training, it's important that if we're going to train somebody to do it, we actually need to know how to do it. So a lot of times up and running is something like, I'm going to hire somebody that has some experience in PPC, and we're going to bring them into real estate, which is exactly what I did. I hired somebody that had experience in PPC, but didn't truly understand real estate investor marketing. And it was a huge, colossal waste of money. I mean, I lost like $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in just their advertisements in a period of like 4 to 5 months. It was bad. And I lost in one day. He ran an ad, and this still makes me a little bit sick. I mean, I can laugh about it now, but in one day, this was last October, Gran Turismo came out with their new video game, GT3 or Grand Theft Auto. That's what it was, GT3 or something like that. And so across the United States, people typed in, how do I sell my house on GT3 on Google? And I paid for it. And it was like $2,000 in 2 days, or $5,000 in 5. It was like, oh no, we blew our budget because we didn't keep an eye on it, and we didn't have triggers and flags in place. So to go back to your question of how do you train somebody, I don't think the answer is any different than another employee. if you're going to hire an employee that knows how to do the job, you're not training them. You're assisting them to ensure that you understand your market. And if you're actually training them, I don't have a great answer because every piece of training is different. So for me, I find if I can stay 2 steps ahead on whatever it is. So like right now, we're hiring somebody to blog for us. So we use actually 5 VAs. So one of our virtual assistants is blogging for us using artificial intelligence. They use a program called Jasper.ai. It's wicked cool. And she can write a blog using commands to generate content extremely quickly. So normally I can write a blog post, say 1,000-word blog post in like an hour. Now I can do a blog post in about 10 minutes because we're using AI to predict what we want it to say. So it's kind of like Google, where we're texting and it knows what to say next.
Yeah.
It's like that, but for a paragraph. It's unreal. So anyway, she's doing that. I know how to do that. So what I do is, as I've been training her, I just make sure I'm 1 or 2 steps in front of her. I'm not going to lay out a whole path. I'm not going to lay out a whole curriculum, because if she understands something very quickly, I may not have to do the training on it. So I just make sure if I know what I'm doing, I stay 1 or 2 steps in front of the employee. If I don't know what I'm doing, I want to hire a professional for that. So for us, we hire an SEO company to do that. I have nothing to do with SEO. I outsource PPC because I don't have any idea how to do PPC properly. So we've learned, if you don't know how to do it, outsource it. If you do know how to do it, make sure you're 1 or 2 steps ahead and come up with a good training organization to kind of push an employee through the proper steps. Don't throw everything at once.
Yeah, no, that's great. As you're building out your team and you're starting to scale your company, and this is totally a selfish question I'm asking you, the listeners will probably fast forward through this, but like, how do you figure out, okay, we need to add somebody else in because for whatever reason, right? Like we're scaling and we just need more bandwidth and we need somebody to take on some stuff. Like, how do you build out that job description? As you're growing the organization and figure out who needs to do what. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, and I always try, before I try to hire somebody, I try to automate it. So we're extremely automated in our business. We use a program called Zapier. And our CRM we use is called Sierra Interactive. You don't have to use that CRM. There's 100 good ones. But my point is Zapier talks to Sierra, which talks to all of our marketing. So when a lead comes in, so Jordy, let's say you register on our website, your lead comes in, we instantly are going to send you postcards. You just registered, but we're still going to send you postcards because remember, we only convert like 1 out of 12 leads that come in. So those other 11, maybe we caught them at a bad time. Maybe they got busy and forgot. Maybe they put the property under contract, but it's going to fall apart. And so we send postcards because our average acquisition cost is $254 per lead. So postcards are what, like 55 cents or something. So we spend $6 or $8 per lead to retarget them with actual mail. And all of that's done through a program, as I mentioned, Zapier, Zapier. And so when things come in, things go out and it happens automatically. And I mean, we're pushing 50, 60, 70,000 automations a month, and everything from automatic text to automatic voicemails to postcards. We send closing gifts that I'm working on getting automation for. So what we do is we try to automate before we delegate, and that keeps our operational costs a lot lower. It's a lot cheaper to hire a $200,000 or $200 program that is to hire a $50,000 employee. So first thing I do is automate. The next thing is like, are we too busy or do we have opportunities? So if our team can handle it, that could be okay. But if there's a value add, so for example, Tyler can easily do his job right now. He goes like, I'm probably 30 hours a week. This is my partner. I'd like him to be at 20. And the reason I want that is Tyler and I are very interested in acquisition. So we want to go buy either larger triple net properties, move into industrial acquisition. So we really need to put time into that, or we want to go buy a business. And we're still trying to figure out where we're going with that. So in order to get him there, in order to open up the opportunities that we're looking toward, we need to start pushing his task to somebody else. And that's why we hired Matt. So a lot of what I see is top down. So like, if we push something from this employee, what can they do that's more productive? And then the key we need to look at is the bottom two, right? We need to be very conscious of the janitor, or say, look at the very lowest. If there's too many trash cans for them to empty, they're, the apartment complex can be completely nasty. So we need to make sure that even the lowest level employee isn't overworked. So when we do a daily check for our sales team, and we ask them like, what's their throttle, is what we call it. So like, we like our employees at like a 7. So we don't want them at 100. That's too much. And so we like them at a 7, because if it's 5, they get bored and then they take on a second job. If it's 10 and it's more than 10 for a few days in a row, they hate their job. They're frustrated with us. So we like them to keep them, productively busy. And so if I see a lot of 10s, or I have a lot of opportunities that can be chased, it'd probably be a good time to hire somebody and put them in a role that can push opportunities, up the chain. So
how do you do that every day? Is it a form they fill out? Is it you hop on a Zoom meeting at the end of the day?
yeah, so great question. So with my transaction coordinator, I talk to her all the time. And so I ask her, like, that's one question we ask every day, is like, how busy are you? Do you have time for something else? And so that's very easy. For our sales team, we're more systematic with it. So we do what's called an end of day report. And we ask a few questions. I don't think I can find the form easily, so I'll try to remember. So the first question is, what are you grateful for? It's very easy. I just want to know. The second is, what was your throttle? The third, did you get stuck on anything? And this is specifically for the Filipino culture. I put it in here for Filipinos don't like to feel stuck, and because then they may feel they failed you. So sometimes they won't tell you. So very purposely asking, did you get stuck, is important. So we say, did you get stuck? Yes or no. And then, are you ready for another project? And I think that is it. So yeah, how busy are you? Did you get stuck? Do you need another project? And what are you grateful for? I think those are the 4. It's just a Google form. It populates a new Google sheet. And then Tyler, our sales manager, goes through and just making sure everybody's healthy and happy. So
cool. No, and that's really important. And I'm glad that I asked that question and we got here, because my next question is totally not related to business, but lifestyle, right? Like, the only reason we have businesses, we buy real estate, we do everything that we're doing, is so that we can have a lifestyle.
Yep.
Right. And more specifically, right, like, I'm focused, I'm 32. Seems like you're a very similar age. I'm very focused on like lifestyle design right now, where, I want to work, I want to crush it while I'm here. I want to grow it. I want to create opportunities, but I'm not working more than 40 hours a week, right?
Yep.
Like, we took 12 weeks off last year, and I know you're very similar. So maybe talk to us a little bit about why that's important for you and your organization.
Yeah. So we just this week, actually today, implemented a new vacation tracker. And I'd say most local organizations would do it so people don't take too much vacation. Ours is the opposite. So Jill is one of our employees. She's been with us for 4 years now, from the Philippines, and she's taken Christmas vacation, and she had maternity leave for 3 months. And I don't think she's taken another day off. And I keep asking her, like, when are you going to have vacation days? And so we actually, it's funny, I'm making her build it. So she's implementing our vacation tracker so that people take a minimum. So we give all our employees 15 days off a year. And, it's not encouragement. Like, I really want people to take vacation time. And so I do the same thing. So ensuring that we have good employee wellness is extremely important. So like, my family and I, we're striving to sort of change my own schedule. So we're leaving the 27th, I believe, right after Thanksgiving. So 28th or 29th of November. And we're going for a 2-month road trip and living in a truck. So it'll be pretty exciting. I'm going to be working from 5 to 8 a.m. every day. Take a lunch where I'm going to do some meetings like noon to 2, and then do an 8 o'clock to 9 p.m. just sort of clean up of my business and make sure everything's on track. So I'm going to be working on the road, but I'm going to do it like extreme bookends of the day.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's awesome. And I think it's important people hear that, because they hear, hey, you're going to take 2 months and do whatever, but you're still working on your business, right? You're just not working in the business. Where are you guys headed? Michigan is cold, snowy.
That's why we're leaving. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. So we're going to be in a Toyota Tacoma with a slide-in truck camper. So our 2 kids and our dog. So we're going to go to where the weather's warm. So we're not really sure. We have one stop scheduled December 3rd through 17. I'm signed up for a paramotoring course through Aviator PPG. So I'm going to go learn how to fly a paramotor, and basically a big box fan strapped to your back with a big kite over your head. So that's going to be my 2 week of self-indulgence, which I've never done. I've never taken a 2-week vacation by myself. So my wife and kids are going to go and spend time with the in-laws, and then somewhere out west, wherever it's warm, for the next month and a half.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, the cool thing about that is, and my wife and I talk about this all the time, like your kids, they're 4.5 and 2.5, right? And
correct. Yep.
they will never be 4.5 and 2.5 ever again.
Yeah.
And so, to a certain degree, I look at some of these guys, and this is why I resonated so much with GoBundance, and is like, you got to live a well-balanced life where, like, I don't think we are wired and meant to be as humans. Like, we are not meant to do nothing. Right? If most people got dropped on a beach, they would like it for about 3 days. And then they'd be like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Right? Like,
what's the next apartment complex I can buy?
we need purpose, and like, we need the next goal. And I just think, like, that's how we're wired. And this mortal experience that we have, where, like, we're learning and growing and struggling, and, like, it's meant to be that way. It's not meant to be like, oh yeah, I'm 32 and retired and I'm going to do nothing the rest of my life. Yeah. Those are the people that die. Like, you just don't have a purpose. Yeah. And so anyways, I think it's awesome that you're doing this while your kids are little. Sure, is it going to be uncomfortable? Yeah. Right. Like, you got 2 little kids, but you're never going to have that opportunity ever again. And the same could be said when they're 5 and 3 and 6 and 4. And, like, they're only little once.
Yeah. And they grow up so fast. It's incredible.
Yeah.
They scream like pterodactyls every now and then, but you still love them,
Yeah. You just need to be the bigger pterodactyl.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, we kind of we went all over the place, but we talked a lot about your journey and just kind of where you're at. So, I mean, what's the one thing you'd tell someone currently who's working towards financial freedom?
If they're just at the beginning, like if they're just starting, the first thing I'd say is just make sure you cut down on your personal expenses. So it's twice as easy to be financially free if you spend 40 grand than if you do 80 per year. And so we live on $42,000 to $44,000 a year has been our sort of average family budget. I think we eat fairly well and live in a fairly nice place. So that's the first thing I do. And the second is, it's not linear growth for sure. So when we bought our rentals, it wasn't like buy one. Like, I hear this a lot. Like, I'm going to buy 10 rentals in the next 10 years. No, you're not. Like, if you're going to buy 10 rentals in 10 years, you're going to buy 1 this year, 1 at year 5, 2 in year 6, 3 in year 7, and another 3 in year 8, right? That's kind of how the math works. And so when we look at mine, we went from $100,000 of real estate and we literally doubled. And now we're approaching $10 million in rentals, apartment complexes, and we're in some syndications that cash flow. We've got oil investments. It's very exciting, but and every year seems to be twice as fast as the year before, which is extremely exciting. So don't get depressed when, like, I look backwards and I'd be like, man, like, how do I get from rental 1 to rental 2? Like, I just spent my $32,000 on my down payment. I got nothing left. And it goes fast. It's like the kids growing up, right? The second one is going to come half as fast, or it's going to come twice as fast as your first one. And so sort of focusing on overall growth and don't thinking in a linear perspective is important. And I'd say anywhere you are, the important thing is, I think, mentality. So I hear this a lot. Like, I struggled a lot. Like, we asked ourselves, what do we want to do in 10 years in the flip world? And I just hired my employee, Matt. And he's like, what do you see your company like in 3 years? I'm like, oh man, I don't even know if we're going to be flipping houses. And he's like, what? Like, he wants stability, right? But I'm realizing the more and more I've been an investor, the more I've realized it's important to pivot and put yourself in front of the money because it's easier. And so when you're investing, when you're getting started off, if you're, a few years in the road or you're starting today, the important thing is being prepared to pick up what you've done and change. Because if you keep tried and true, or not tried and true, if you never pivot, it can be very, very hard. If interest rates change, if the government has eviction moratoriums, if COVID causes commercial, industry to drop, or interest rates are at 12 instead of 4.5 or 5.5, we're going to have to change our business. And I think that's something I didn't really realize as much. Sure, I don't really realize it, but as much a few years ago as I do today, is it's really important to be prepared to move assets to better fit where your lifestyle and your finances are.
Yeah. That's really good. Because I wholeheartedly agree. So often someone buys a house and they're like, I'm going to keep this for 30 years. And I'm like, well, don't say that. Like, don't put yourself in that box, because what if something in life happens and you have to sell an asset to do something else, or you have another opportunity and you can harvest equity in that asset by there's just too many variables. The important thing is, and I love that you said this, is like, you just need to do it. Like, you need to buy one and then figure out the next step. Like, don't sit here and go, well, year one, I'm doing this, and 2, this, and 3, like,
you're so right about, like, you got to do it, man. So I'm going to give you an example, because I think this is so cool. So everyone talks about 1031 and cost segregation studies, right? So they're always interesting until you hear a very real world story. So I bought a rental in Holland for $101,000. I used a mortgage. I kept it for 2 years. I sold it. I 1031 the property, so I didn't pay taxes on it. And then I went and bought myself 2 duplexes in Spring Lake. I did 50% down on them because I had too much money, so I had to use my whole thing. So now I had 2 duplexes, 4 units from one. Remember, I only put $30,000 down on this thing. I sold both of those for like $520,000, I think, 540, something like that. 1031'd it into a 23 unit senior home in Lincoln, Michigan. And I bought it cash. I borrowed 200 grand hard money. And then I refied out. I had all my money back, and I own the complex still. And like, if I would have thought in a linear method, I'd have 3 rentals. But now we've got 23 units that are worth $700,000 or $800,000, and I have no money into it. And that actually cash flows. Single family homes, they have too many roofs, too many furnaces, and thinking exponential, don't thinking linear, is really the just get started, because exponentially grows from anywhere.
Yep. But you got to grow. Like, had you not bought that first deal, you could have never bought the duplex. That you could have never parlayed that into the 23 unit, right? And it's just like, I take a look at our portfolio every November and say, next year, what are the dogs, or what are the properties that, I'm totally okay selling because they've got electrical issues, or we've had to replace too much, and the equity has grown and it's not cash flowing, and like, ton of different metrics. But I love that, man. That's awesome. Yeah. So we'll wrap it up and put a bow on it with this one question. Knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently on your journey?
I would have hired slower, fired faster, and paid my employees more from the beginning. I think I'm doing it now. We're extremely cautious, but I try to faster fire myself. So my goal is always to be doing something different this year than I am a year previous.
Yeah.
And I think I would hire the best employee I can afford rather than the cheapest employee that can do the job.
So good. Cool. Well, Kase, I really enjoyed our conversation.
It was a pleasure. Yeah.
We will link to your social media. But if people want to find out more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so Jordy said I'm all over social media. I didn't think we were, but yeah, if you guys want to go to overlandinvestor.com, we can give you some information on investing and maybe some upcoming opportunities. So
Awesome. Cool. Well, I enjoyed our conversation. I'm looking forward to hearing about your guys' 2-month stint in warm weather, not in cold Michigan this summer or this winter. It'll be summer for you, depending on where you go. So
yes, sir.
appreciate the conversation and enjoyed getting to know you better.
Very good. Thank you, Jordy.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for joining me for another episode of The Financially Free Investor. If you found value in this episode or know someone who would find value in this information, please share with them, subscribe, and send us a review.